Okay, ladies and gentlemen, today's lesson is going to be using this note sheet. It is Unit 2, Section 1, where we're going to learn how to solve multi-step equations. These equations are going to involve the distributive property and most likely combining like terms. So for some of us, this is a review. You probably learned some of this last year, but in 8th grade, we continue on learning this topic, and we need to get really good at this. So, for the first part of your notes, you're going to fill in step 1. If there are parentheses in the equation, you will always distribute. And then you are going to look to see if there are any like terms that you can combine. And then you are going to solve using inverse operations. Remember, we sometimes call these opposite operations. Adding is the opposite of subtracting. Multiplying is the opposite of dividing. And then we check. Make sure our solutions are correct. So guys, for your first example, the way it was written to you didn't have this raised dot. I put the raised dot to remind us that we are going to distribute using multiplication the number that is on the outside of the parentheses to the number that's on the inside. So remember, you can draw arrows to help you make sure that you're distributing properly. So guys, when we do this, 2 times 2x is 4x, 2 times negative 3 is negative 6, and we bring down our equal sign and our 10. Some of you prefer using a locker, and that locker is going to help you stay organized between your two sides, so I would recommend that. We also have what looks to be just like a two-step equation that we were working on the other day, so always remember to get rid of your adding or subtracting. In this case, to get rid of our subtracting 6, we're going to cancel it out by adding 6. Bring down our 4x. 10 plus 6 is 16. And then, of course, we have one last step at the very end. 4 times x equals 16. So to undo this multiplication, we are going to divide. So x equals 4. And when you're checking, we need you to write down the original equation. So copy it right down. And then in place of the variable, remember we said x is 4, I want you to plug in your 4. And I'll just do that in a different color so it shows up. And then your job, guys, is to actually do the work on the sides. So if that means picking up the calculator, you're welcome to do that. Or you could do it by hand. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 minus 3 is 5. 2 times 5 is 10. So if you did it in your head, great. If you typed it in the calculator, type in exactly what you see, and you should also be getting the 10. And it's balanced, and that's a good thing. If it balances out when you're checking, it means that we did all this work correctly. Okay, so moving on to the next example. What we have here is a fraction, and we also have to be careful because not only are there parentheses, there's an extra term over here on the left-hand side of where I'm going to draw the locker. So just keep in mind that we're going to deal with that extra term a little later. We still want to make sure we're distributing first. Remember, that is the thing we said you're always going to work on first when you see a parenthesis in your equation. So 1/2 times 2x means I have 1x. 1/2 times 4 means I have 2. And then, as always, we need to bring down the other terms that we haven't been working on yet so that we can see what we have. What we have is a really crowded left side to our equation. We have 1x, remember the invisible 1 that you want to draw, plus 5x, which we know is 6x. So by doing that second step, remember we said after distributing you sometimes have to combine like terms. Once we combine like terms, I always say that we should be home free from here on down because this is a two-step equation. And when you solve a two-step equation, remember, there are only 2 things that have to be taken care of. And in this case, we get -4. So I'm going to try to squeeze my check in over here. And I need to make sure that 1/2 times 2 times that answer really is -22. So be really careful checking this time. There's a lot of numbers to be typing into our calculator when we get to this. And here is another place where we have to plug in our variable. or our value for x. X is -4 in both places. So if we do this by hand, this is going to make -20. This is going to make -8. -8 plus 4 is -4. And then we still have the 1/2 out front that we need to deal with. Half of -4 is -2. -2 plus -20 is -22. So it does balance out. And I ran out of room on my note sheet, so I hope you guys can see it okay. All the parts and pieces are there. If you wanted to, guys, remember, you could take this whole side and you could type that whole thing into your calculator, being really careful that you got all the symbols where you see them. Hit enter, and it should also tell you that it's -22. So again, once it's balanced, we know that we did all of our solving correct. And again, we distributed, we combined like terms, and we used our inverse operations to solve before checking. So guys, on this side, you have this crazy little exclamation cloud, whatever you want to call it, and what I wanted to remind you is with this one, when you go to distribute, you do have some negative numbers. So please remember, when you multiply a negative times a negative, you will get a positive value. So -4 times -5 is 20x. -4 times 3 is -12. And again, I'm going to have you bring down the equal sign. I'm going to have you bring down the answer. Even though the answer this time is over here, I can still draw my locker. And I can still look and see if there's anything to combine. And I can definitely see that there is. We have 20 x's plus 4 more x's. So 24x. And then we're going to get rid of our 12. And at the very end, remember, we're going to divide. These are attached by multiplication. So to undo our multiplication, that's why we're dividing. And we get x equals 1. So we'll squeeze the check in. And again, because the equation is so involved, we're going to have two places where you're plugging in the value that we just got. X is +1. Not only there, but also right here. So again, if you wanted to, you could grab your calculator and you could type in this entire thing to see if it equals 12. I'm going to work through by hand. So -5 times 1 is -5. Plus 3 more is -2. Times -4 is going to be 8. And then back here, I'm going to just have my 4 times 1, which is another 4. So I can tell you right now this is correct because I was able to get 12 on both sides. Now, in this case, again, I want you to be really careful because when you see the equation and you see that there's parentheses, we have to remember to not worry so much about these other terms out front while we're doing the first step, which remember is distributing. So the number directly in front of your parentheses, guys, this number right here is what we distribute with. We're only distributing with this -2. So -2 times x is -2x, but be really careful back here. -2 times -8 is +16. Okay, so out front we're going to bring down our -2x, we're going to bring down our +4. And I think what we're going to put in this little circle over here is that we're only distribute the -2. And I'll put -2 in quotes because that's really the only item that is attached to our parentheses that we're distributing. Everything else comes down. And then what we could do is we could look for those things to combine. There's some x's that we combine. And here's some constant terms that we're combining. So again, once we get here to this, okay, that should be recognized as a nice little two-step equation. Again, we should be home free. We should be comfortable making sure that we got rid of our 20 and making sure that we divide to get rid of our -4. So this is telling me -6. And I'm going to squeeze my check in again. And again, I can type this whole thing in my calculator, or I can work step by step. This gives me 12. And let's see, down here, this is going to give me negative 14. Negative 14 times negative 2 is positive 28. So then if I do one more thing, let's see, this gives me 16. 16 and 28 looks like 44. So again, we have both sides of our equation balancing out, and that tells us that what we did here was correct to find the solution. I'm going to have you guys pause the video, and I want you to work through this last example. And then once you're done working through the example, play the video again, and what I'll do is I'll have your answers for you to check. So go ahead, pause the video, try it on your own, and then play for the ending. Okay guys, so we were able to give you a little bit of time to practice this. Remember, you're distributing first. So 2/3 times 6x gave us this 4x. 2/3 times 30 gives us 20. And then you can see I just brought the other terms down. If I had to have a locker, my locker kind of got a little disorganized here, so it's kind of right here where the two sides are. But you can see how I brought my 80 down after I combined the like terms. I had 4x's plus 2x's, and then I had my 20 plus my 6. And then from here down, guys, what you're looking at is just the solving of those last two steps. I moved my 26, I divided by 6, I got x equals 9. So now if you have any questions, you need to make sure you see me in person. You need to take this note sheet. You've got this dotted line. You know what to do with that. Cut your paper, put it in your notebook where it's supposed to go, please. And then I have a practice assignment for you to work on when you are done. So please make sure you let me know about questions, and good luck on your assignment.